Hi everyone, welcome back to the Campagnoli project. I'm Giles, and today we're going to talk about Campagnoli Caprice number 2. It's an andante con moto, also kind of a bit of a theme and variations, and it sort of has two movements, kind of like Caprice number 1. We have the andante part, and then there's a little più moto at the end with some triplets. So this Caprice is a nice one to really explore the sound, your sound capabilities, and the elasticity in your strings, because we have to have such a soft touch to get these chords to sound rich and full. So at the beginning here, starting with this G major chord, which, as we talked about in the previous tutorial, it comes out of a half cadence from the first Caprice. So it sort of resolves the last Caprice number 1. So it should sound nice and round and full, marked forte at the beginning. And actually, I see a little sforzando, actually. So that's actually kind of interesting. I've never noticed that before. And I want to add that I'm looking off of the original engraving, which you can find on IMSLP, and I recommend using that version because that's closest to, what Campagnoli wrote. It was transcribed directly from his manuscript. So, here we want to have that downbeat again being nice and strong and full, and then just floating on the up bows. And when you're working on triple stops, if you haven't done a lot of that work before, what I always tell my students is break the chord into the bottom 2 and then the top 2. So if you have the middle string, it's the same, right? And that's going to give you the most sound. The other thing is you want to break your chord low to the frog, so you use the most pressure here, and then you use the most bow on the upper 2 notes. So I'm using about this much bow on the bottom, and then the rest on the top to draw out the top voices. They need less bow and more pressure. So we want to have that impetus on 1 always, and then sort of floating the bow on the up bows for the beat 2 and so that third measure is going to get more than the first measure because it's a slightly more dissonant chord. Going on here. So when I play that measure, I do 2 up bows so that I can, on the second and third beats, so I can be down bow on the next beat on the D and E. Right, we have a piano crescendoing out. So that does mean you have to break up the chord on the up bow. So that one, instead of breaking it 2 and 2, I'm just rolling it a little more gently so that I can finesse it a little bit. So that it sings a little bit more. Otherwise, it's going to sound a little harsh there. Interestingly, he puts, and now I'm looking at 2 measures from the first repeat. He puts those little hairpins, decrescendos on every beat there, and so he wants you to stress the moving line and not the open Ds, which are obviously not as important. Good, and then do take the repeats in this. I think that's nice because it's such a short piece. And then when you go back and do the repeat, you can add like a tiny little ornament or something if you want to. And the one I like to add, or you can change the dynamics. But at the beginning, I like to add this on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th measure. Just add a little filling in the line there so that add a C so that it just sounds a little bit different. And that would have been obviously a very traditional thing to do back in Campagnoli's day. So, all right, so going on to the barrage, always fun. And this is a real stretch for the hands. I always wonder if Campagnoli either had big fingers or probably also played on a smaller viola, because some of these chords are a real challenge for hand manipulation for me and possibly for you too. So here we want to, again, stress the bottom note, of course. When you're practicing this, the barrage can have a tendency to get a little messy with the string crossings. So just make sure that you're hitting the bottom and the top accurately. When you practice it a little bit slower. You can also, of course, take your left hand out, add a little accent on the bottom and the top so that you're making sure to get really clear string crossings. Then we can also practice as double stops. That one, so look where my elbow is. Anytime you're having a hard time reaching something, remember that the elbow angle is such an important thing for upper string players, but especially for violists, to be able to reach that fourth finger around and bringing the thumb back. Lastly, just a lot of finessing in this one. So this one you want to really feel very cushiony on your strings. So to start it, I think it's sort of a mysterious sound. It's an E minor chord right at the beginning, and it should sound mysterious. You can bring that out by just having kind of a softer touch. And then sort of easing into a louder dynamic. And taking time is a good thing too. You know, anytime you want to stress a chord, take a little bit of time on it. You're unaccompanied, so enjoy that. Let's see. Okay, so then we get to, let's see, I'm going to start around, I'll start at measure 10, 11, 12, 13. So we have a character change there, and just make sure that your dotted rhythm is maybe a little bit more militant and sharp feeling there to bring out the change in the character break, right? So there we're gonna do our traditional chord break. And then we start again. Right. And then going on, so here we have a little bit more, not really a barrage, but some string crossings. So keeping your fingers down, so the fourth finger's got to come off, but the second finger does not, so keep it down. Again, this is a cushiony spot. You don't want to have sudden angle changes. You want your bow to be very rounded and smooth when you're playing this. So the more angular you are about the bow change, the more angular your sound is going to be. So rounded and smooth. Let's see. And then we go back. Let's go on though. So he's really working on a lot of techniques here. Here he goes for thirds and sixths and tenths. So that's going to be obviously a left hand technique spot. You know, when you're thinking about left hand flexibility, do consider how much your first finger has to offer in terms of flexibility. It's more than any other finger. It can go back and forward a lot. So make sure it's high enough and that you're angling it back as much as possible, bringing your elbow in to reach those intervals. And excuse me, I have a cold and I'm in a cold studio next to a space heater, so I'm trying to imagine Campagnoli playing in front of like a coal stove or something and getting a little taste of what it might be like for a musician in the 19th century. All right, good. So let's move on to the Peoto at the end. So I like to use kind of a sautier stroke for this, and I was interesting. I was talking with a student who, a viola student of mine who had not really explored or hadn't really known about all the types of staccato you can have on a stringed instrument, because she comes from a background of singing and wind instruments, and I was trying to explain that there are many different types of staccato, right? There's a martelet. There, like, these are all just short notes, right? But you can have spiccato, you can have martelet, you can have sautier. You can even, you know, have more of a portato, which isn't really staccato, but the point being that we have a giant toolbox as string players to choose from with our short notes, right? So in here, I would use more of a sautier brushy stroke. If I can play in tune, my hands are freezing. So always bringing out that first note. And what's interesting is that this piece is in 3, but it really goes by 2 measure groups, right? So the first measure is an F7 chord, and then it resolves to a B flat chord, so it's a 5-1. So there's tension, and then it relaxes. And the relaxing measure starts on an up bow. So we have a down bow, and then an up bow on that. And then we have another tension measure here, resolving again. So a C7 resolving to an F. So that's sort of the pattern and the structure of this portion of the Caprice. And I like how he did that, so that you have the down bow on the stressed part, and then the up bow to sort of lighten up the character there. So, and he also put the hairpins on the first, the third, and so on measures in the Peoto. So if you follow that structure, it's really, the music is gonna make itself, right? And then let's see. It's a little more interesting here, and he puts in more slurs so that you're always down bow on the downbeat. So that's also interesting too. So if you use, I believe every edition is the same for this one, but sometimes the bowings are different as editors have gone through and decided what they want to do with it. So always good to see what the composer really intended and whether you really want to change it. And in most of these caprices, I would say you don't need to change anything. So he's got down bow on every measure. So the pace, the harmonic pace picks up, sort of, and the drama sort of picks up. I love this part right right here where it, on measure 36, counting from the very beginning of the Caprice, we have that descending line, right? We have F in measure 36, E in measure 37, D sharp in measure 38, and then it resolves to E in measure 39, but it not a low E, on a high E. So this was a little interesting spot for me because sorry if I can play in tune. A lot of string crossings, and that first finger that has to change here. I suppose you don't have to, but for me I did. Shift it up. But make sure you know where your string crossings are and where your finger shifts or changes may be, so that you can really pinpoint exactly what's happening mechanically. And so what I ended up doing there was adding a little accent on that E, just so that I could give myself a little bit of time to get up to that note. Yeah, so the other main thing with this, technique-wise, in this section, is to just give a lot of weight on the lower notes, and then just lighten up on the upper notes and make sure that you're keeping a brushy stroke throughout, so it's not getting too picky. He did write staccatos, but I think you could do it that way. I like, and I'm adding slurs now for some reason. So lengthening on the important notes, the harmonic changes, and then sort of lightening up a little bit after that. But always making sure that your tone is really rich. And slow practice is a great way to do that, but make sure you're not using too much bow. You get to hear me make all the mistakes. It's like a practice session for me today. So yeah, and then at the end, I like using the original bowing, even though it ends on an up bow. As I talked about before, this one segues into the next piece, and it's sort of, so that E major chord resolves to A major. So I do think if you're, say, performing this and you have the option, you're not playing it for a competition or something like that, if you can go on to the next one, it makes a lot more sense musically. And it resolves that tension that sort of hangs in the air at the end of this piece. Yeah, so I hope this helped a bit. Shoot me any questions on the comments below if you have anything that needs clarification, or if you have another request. It's a crazy time with homeschooling 3 kids and teaching and performing and all the things I do, but I appreciate that that these videos are getting that are helping people, and so I am always happy to do it and fit it in when I can. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you again soon.